going on, you guys? It's your boy Patrick, aka Addicted to Combat, back for another week of UFC action. UFC Vegas 66, Jared Cannonier versus Sean Strickland in the potential 5-round main event at middleweight. A very fun fight, and we've got a bunch of fights on this card that have remained. I believe 13 or 14 we'll get through at this point. I'll be brief with the explanations in this video, but tomorrow night, Tuesday night at 6 p.m. Central Time, I will have my friend Manpreet, MMA Lock of the Night. Well-respected guy in the game, longtime OG of MMA betting, very profitable and sharp guest, to break down these spots with me, and hopefully we'll have the prop bets out as well tomorrow night. Join me there. And yeah, this is the 42nd UFC event of the year that I've covered with you guys, done every single one, and it's been an absolute blast. So hit the like, hit the subscribe. Let's keep this channel growing strong into 2023. We're coming off of a very successful UFC 282 pay-per-view, going undefeated with those money lines, 5 wins and 1 push for over 7 units of profit. Let's do it again this week, pick our spots wisely, and let's break into the prelims. But first, as always, check out BetUS Sportsbook. Use my promo code AddictedToCombat125 for free money to gamble with, a 125% deposit bonus match on the sportsbook, all the way up to $2,500 when you're a new customer. So check that out, and let's get into the first fight of the night. First up on the prelims, we have Sergey Morozov taking on Journey Newson at bantamweight. This is a spot where both guys have a lot of similarities on paper, right? The same height and reach. 5'5" with a 67-inch reach. They're both 33 years old. And they're both 2-2 in the UFC so far, but that's about where it ends. I mean, Sergey Morozov can pretty much do everything Newson can do and better. Sergey Morozov, a slick striker, good durability, good pace and cardio, a high level of competition so far. And he can wrestle, to get his way out of a bad situation. He can wrestle just to win dominantly with control time and look for submissions. 18-5 for Morozov, the former M1 champion. 8 knockouts, 3 submissions, and he's 7-1 in decisions. Journey Newson is 10-3 as a professional. And again, like I mentioned, their 2-2 record in the UFC piece is very different. With Newsom getting a round 1 knockout, very nice overhand right knockout over Domingo Pilarte. He's just coming off of a win, a decisive 30-27 victory, but that was over a debuting guy off the Contender Series in Fernie Garcia. So this is drastically different styles here. We've got Morozov as a guy who's proven at the high level against guys like Douglas Silva de Andrade to have power, a guy who outclassed Khalid Taha, a guy who just outclassed Raulian Paiva after early adversity in that fight. So I've seen Morozov dig deep and come back and show a wide array of skills, both striking and wrestling. Journey Newsom's a plus 210 underdog. Morozov's a minus 245 favorite. I can see why. I do have a bet on Sergey Morozov, and I do think he gets this done inside the distance, somewhere probably within the first 2 rounds. So give me Morozov, either by knockout or by club and sub victory. I'm surprised that this is the second fight of the prelims. These are 2 ranked flyweights, Manel Kape and David Dvorak. Both guys have very stellar records. Both guys have good experience. And Manel Kape, the former risen bantamweight champion, moved to flyweight to come to the UFC, where he was looked on very highly. Signed to the UFC probably on a good contract because he was the alternate should Moreno or Davison Figueiredo not make their title fight the first time back in late 2020. They would have let Manel Kape fight for that belt on short notice. In his debut for the title, the world could have been a different place should one of them not been able to make that fight. But Manel Kape, very good everywhere, 29 years old. He's got a similar height and reach to Dvorak. Both are 5'5" with a 68-inch reach. Manel Kape is a finisher even at this weight class. Between flyweight and bantamweight, he's got 11 knockouts out of 17 wins. Also 5 submissions. So only 1 win has ever been by decision for Manel Kape, which is actually shocking at flyweight, where he's gone 1-4 in decision results. I've bet on Manel Kape every single time he's been in the UFC. He's gone 2-2, so I've lost 2 bets on him, won the last 2 bets on him. He lost to Pantoja by a close decision. He lost to Nicolau by a close decision. And he beat, in round 1 knockout, both Zhalgas Zhumagulov and Ode Osborne. So a very intense potential for knockout and explosivity, very good in and out movement. He could be a very good point fighter if he wanted to, but he always looks for that highlight reel knockout. He is an exciting guy, Manel Kape, but he does have good wrestling as well and a good BJJ submission offense. But he can be caught playing BJJ off of his back if he gets taken down by a better wrestler, content to hold that bottom position, look for sweeps or triangles and things like that. That's been his downfall in some spots, even in his risen career. Now, he does have the higher level experience, I would say, fighting guys like he ended the career of Mizugaki, who was a longtime UFC and WEC champion over in Risen. He knocked out Mizugaki and ended his career. He also had a KO over Kaya Asakura. They went 1-1, I believe, in their rivalry over there in Risen. So high-level Asian promotion experience there. David Dvorak is off the Czech Republic scene. Very good win streak, 16 wins, and that was snapped by Mateusz Nicolau, who had the bigger moments, able to knock down David Dvorak and just outstrike him and outclass him over 3 rounds. Dvorak, 20 wins, 4 losses, 8 knockouts, 8 submissions, a positive record in decision results. And he's only been KO'd 1 time, whereas Manel Kape, forgot to mention, he's very durable, never been knocked out, only submitted 1 time. So, I mean, it's a flyweight fight, likely going to go to decision. I do think Manel Kape is better everywhere, but the problem is he's a minus 235 to minus 250 favorite. David Dvorak probably has all the value betting-wise, right? There's probably more than a 33% chance that Dvorak could take this to the scorecards and win, avoid the power strikes and power offense of Kape, counter effectively, and just do a little bit more to outstrike Manel Kape in 2 out of 3 rounds. I could see that happening. David Dvorak, not a huge wrestling threat in my opinion. The guy usually sets up submissions with his boxing and damage, grabs the back even from a standing position and club and subs people the way he got his 1 submission over Ronderos in the UFC so far. Now, I do think Kape is better everywhere. I might have said this before. I think he's a better striker, more power, better BJJ when it comes down to it. But should he choose to wrestle, should he choose to strike with more output, I'm not quite sure. It comes down to the big moments for Kape. I do think he gets it done, but I'm probably not going to bet on this one. I'll try to break my 2-2 betting record on Manel Kape another time. So give me Manel Kape to get, we'll call it a round 2 knockout for Manel Kape here. Up next at 170, we have Rinat Fakhretdinov taking on Bryan Battle. This is a short notice replacement match. Fakhretdinov was supposed to take on Michael Morales, and that would have been a very tough test. Bryan Battle could prove to be a tough test as well. Battle is making a second walk to the cage as a welterweight. Fakhretdinov, his second walk to the cage overall, coming off of his debut dominant decision win over Andreas Michailidis earlier this year. So Fakhretdinov is a guy, 31 years old, Russian fighter, I believe some specific sect of Russia as usual. Not Dagestani, but 74-inch reach. He's got a 20-2 record with most of those wins being finishes, knockouts, and submissions over not a big level of competition, honestly, overseas. Padded record, but he did take on Eric Spicely, former UFC fighter at UAE Warriors. Flatlined that guy with a big jab overhand right combination within 55 seconds of round 1. So not only are a lot of his finishes inside the distance, of course, but they are very fast as well, under 1.5 rounds. So strong knees, good clinch elbows, rear waist body lock he'll look for. He'll definitely go for the wrestling right off the bat when the bell rings for the round to start. He's looking for the takedown. He's physically big for the weight class and does try to flatten out his opponents with ground and pound and look for submissions as well. Fakhretdinov, I mean, he's got a lot of knockouts. I'm not too impressed with his striking overall. Not a lot of straight punches, a lot of kind of frantic, poor footwork, dipping his head to, swing the big overhand. He will, lead with a nice lead left hook to counter his opponents as they enter into his range. But overall, who needs, straight punches on the feet when you can just get your opponent to the mat and just destroy them with elbows and try to choke them out? So that's his game plan. Seems pretty good at it. Even though he faced Fakhretdinov had to face Michailidis in his debut. Michailidis gassed out by round 2. I'm surprised Fakhretdinov did not get the finish somewhere down the stretch of that fight, but he looked pretty good cardio-wise himself. Now, Bryan Battle is a workhorse. He's 28 years old, was a middleweight champion, Ultimate Fighter winner of 2021. He's beaten Gilbert Urbina and Tresean Gore. Like I said, dropped down to welterweight. Looked like he had a pretty tough weight cut, but he looked good on fight night with that round 1 head kick knockout in 44 seconds. So not bad coming to this fight. Now, the odds are close. The odds are like a pick-em price tag. I think maybe minus 120 on Fakhretdinov, plus 100 could be had for the slight underdog Bryan Battle on short notice. So amazing striking output for Bryan Battle. Some pretty good durability he's shown. And just the busier fighter usually than his opponents. And he's got some good submission threat as well. The best grappler he's fought so far was on the Ultimate Fighter house, the exhibition fight with Andre Petrosky. He actually choked out Petrosky with that modified guillotine choke after piecing up Petrosky on the feet. Now, I would need a bigger plus number to bet Bryan Battle here. He's looked good, but this is still his second fight at welterweight. We have yet to see how that cardio translates down the pace of a fight at welterweight now. The guy is 8-1, only been subbed one time in his only loss, but not a high level of competition outside of the few names I mentioned under the UFC banner now. So I'm going to go with Rinat Fakhretdinov to be the bigger, stronger man, go for the grappling, and just not give Bryan Battle any room to breathe. Fakhretdinov can hold his own with the striking at least. He's got power to match that of Bryan Battle. As long as he goes for the wrestling game plan early and often, each round, he should be able to maybe even find a submission down the stretch of this fight. So give me Fakhretdinov. I'm not sure about the overs and unders for this fight. They have not been released at this time, but I may look for the under in this spot. You've got the Bryan Battle knockout potential with the striking advantages I see him having, and you've got Fakhretdinov with the ability to grind this fight out on a short notice opponent and possibly get a TKO ground and pound or a club and sub victory. So I might be looking the under. I might be looking for a Fakhretdinov moneyline bet. Gonna see where this line goes. And you look up next at lightweight, we've got Hayaser Maheshate taking on Rafa Garcia, and Maheshate is the young 155er off the Contender Series, where he was a very big underdog that season and got a 3-round decision win. Overcame adversity in round 1, won rounds 2 and rounds 3 with some good striking and toughness and cardio. He was like a plus 600 underdog that night, and he got the job done, got the contract, and made a successful debut in Singapore at UFC 275, knocking out Steve Garcia in round 1 with a nice right cross counter as he was moving backwards, flatline Steve Garcia. So the guy is big. That's how you're supposed to handle Steve Garcia in a debut, is you've got to knock him out early. But it still doesn't show me that much. But 6 foot tall, a long reach for Maheshate, only 23 years old for the Chinese prospect. He's taken on Rafa Garcia, who's got a negative record in the UFC. He's going 2-3, but proven grit, proven toughness, over 16 fights where he's gone 13-3 as a professional. Rafa Garcia has never been knocked out and never been submitted. So Garcia has got 1 knockout but 8 submissions of his own, club and sub victories, and a very strong wrestling game plan is this guy's bread and butter. Now, he does have tight traditional boxing as well. Garcia is very good at being the smaller man in a lot of matchups. Obviously, he's 5'7". He'll be outsized here. He still has a decent reach, and he's very good at being his opponent's shadow, getting on the inside, boxing them up, and then as they're still responding to that, he level changes, gets the takedown. As the fight goes on, he rinse and repeats the takedown threat. Now the opponent is thinking about his takedown threat. They leave the head open for more combinations with the boxing. So, kind of how he gets his job done. I would see this fight being sort of like the Natan Levy fight with Rafa Garcia, right? Where Garcia's facing a slick striker, a guy who likes to fight at range, and a taller man, but he got on the inside, pressured Natan Levy and took him down and won the fight that way with repeated success. So Garcia is tough, man. He's got some decent cardio, manages 4 takedowns on average per fight, and that's over 5 UFC fights so far. So I got to say, all this being said and done, the price tag looks right, minus 120 on Rafa Garcia, who has a clear path to victory here over Maheshate, the plus 100 slight underdog. Just a lot more experience, a proven grit. One of these things where I just got to take Garcia to employ his wrestling game plan. He's known to do it time and time again. And if he spends too much time striking at range with Maheshate, gets the worst end of it, at least I know he's got proven durability at this point. So give me Rafa Garcia. I will have a bet on him at minus 120 on the money line. Up next at bantamweight, and it's at bantamweight, so you already know it's going to be a fun fight. We got Said Nurmagomedov taking on Said Yukub Kahkramonov, 2 guys in their prime at the weight class. Kahkramonov a little bit newer to the UFC. This is going to be, I believe, his 3rd walk to the cage here. Let me double check that real fast. I believe he faced Trevin Jones on short notice. Had a back and forth fight there and then able to dig deep and get that 3rd round submission on Trevin Jones. In his next fight out, yes, this is his 3rd fight. His most previous fight back in July, he fought Ronnie Lawrence. I picked him and bet on him as an underdog. And he flipped the script on Ronnie Lawrence. Got 10 takedowns on Ronnie Lawrence himself, I believe out of like 15 or 16 attempts. Just chain wrestled him to pieces. Was competitive on the feet and, showed some toughness there as well. He ate some big strikes from Ronnie Lawrence. The defense of Kahkramonov is a little bit worrying in this spot, but 27 years old with a 10-2 record versus Said Nurmagomedov, who's 30 years old with a 16-2 record, 5-1 in the UFC. And Nurmagomedov, you hear the last name, you assume this guy's a smothering, wrestler or something of that sort, of like a wet blanket. He's not. He's a loose, very creative striker, loves spinning attacks. He'll hit accurate spinning back fists, followed up very quickly by an accurate spinning back kick. Everything thrown with 100% intensity, accuracy, precision, and just fight-ending intent. And his cardio usually checks out as well. He's got 3 round 1 finishes. And you saw in the end of, I believe that was the end of 2021. No, that was actually earlier this year. I'm sorry. Against Cody Stamann at UFC 270. What happens when Cody Stamann tries to wrestle his way out of a bad situation against Said Nurmagomedov? He got his neck snatched up and he got guillotined in 47 seconds of round 1. So this guy has got Kahkramonov outmatched on the feet with the striking hugely, in my opinion. So that's already a big red flag. The level of competition Said has been fighting, a lot more than Kahkramonov. Although back in the PFL, Kahkramonov did have a very competitive fight, gave a good account of himself against Nurmagomedov, although he was, outmatched there. Again, outstruck on the feet, but Kahkramonov did show some good pace and some good takedown defense. I think Nurmagomedov here has a lot more deceiving strength in the clinch, deceiving strength as far as wrestling defense goes, and sneaky submissions of his own from what we've seen in his past, 6 UFC fights. He did lose. His only loss in the UFC was to Raoni Barcelos, where they had a back-and-forth match on the feet. It came down to round 3, and Raoni Barcelos was able to get the takedown and win that round. Barcelos is a very high-level athlete. Nurmagomedov just had another close fight with Douglas Silva de Andrade, very elite guy, where they both, really needed that round 3, and Said was able to control him and also outstrike him and win that fight. This could come down to a couple scenarios. I could see Nurmagomedov outclassing Kahkramonov so well during round 1 or round 2 that he gets a stoppage early on in this fight. Or I could see, good striking from Said in round 1. Maybe he slows down a bit, gets taken down and controlled just enough to lose round 2, and then it's up in the air to who's going to dig deep in round 3. So if that were the case, I can see why this is a pick-em price tag, minus 110 on each guy at this point on the money line. But I got to go with the higher level striking of Nurmagomedov, who still probably has just enough anti-wrestling in his back pocket, submission know-how to get the job done, even if it goes into a non-striking aspect of the fight. So give me Said Nurmagomedov here. Not quite sure if I'll bet this. Maybe if money does swing in the favor of Kahkramonov, I'll bet this fight. But this is a close one. I think Kahkramonov does have a chance to give a good showing of himself, especially if he's improved his striking. But ultimately, give me Nurmagomedov to get the finish within 2 rounds here. Middleweight bout up next between Julian Marquez and Deron Winn. We've got a spot where Marquez is the minus 160 to minus 170 favorite. Deron Winn, the plus 140, plus 150 underdog at this point. And at first glance, I wonder why this is not a wider money line. Obviously, the first thing that sticks out in any Deron Winn fight at middleweight, he's 5'6", giving up a lot of height to Julian Marquez, especially here. 6'2" for Marquez, sizable reach advantage. 32 for Marquez, 33 years old for Deron Winn. Based on that alone, it looks like the money line should be wide. But then you go into the details and you see that both guys are actually pretty inconsistent in the UFC so far. 3-2 for Marquez in the UFC. Deron Winn is 2-3. You've got the collegiate wrestling credentials for Deron Winn. That is how he has to win his fights. He's got to nullify that reach disadvantage, get the fight where his opponent is underneath him on the mat and can't get up, and he can employ ground and pound and just get control time going. He does have 0 subs, but he's got 4 knockouts. Decent boxing, honestly. It's just hard for him to get in range. But yeah, both guys here are coming off of knockout losses and devastating ones. 2 rounds of getting beat down by Phil Hawes for Deron Winn. 1 round of just an insane beating put on by Gregory Rodriguez. So no shame there, honestly, but still, that was a lot of damage and a very embarrassing look for Marquez, who couldn't get anything going in that fight. Julian Marquez, again, more towards the Deron Winn side here. Marquez has been taken down in all of his fights except for his previous 2. One against RoboCop Rodriguez, I just talked about. He didn't even have to get taken down. Just got the shit kicked out of him on the feet. Before that, he got the layup win over Sam Alvey, club and subbed him. didn't need the takedown to lock in that rear naked choke. So Marquez, 9 wins, 100% finish rate among those, 6 knockouts and 3 submissions. The last knockout he had was over Phil Hawes on the Contender Series about 5 years ago. Brutal combinations and then a head kick to top it off. Now he's subbed Darren Stewart, he's subbed Maki Pitolo, and he's subbed Sam Alvey. So, look, I really do think that Marquez is going to be the guy who can work through fatigue a lot better. He'll get the striking exchanges, the better of those on the feet with his big size advantage. Not the most finesse on Marquez's striking, but it is powerful. And at this range, he should be able to, get the better of the combinations. Deron Winn could have some early success with the wrestling, as a lot of people do with Marquez. But, as Deron Winn gets tired trying to hold down Marquez, keep him held down, I think the takedowns could become routine, predictable, and a little bit desperate. And he could get his neck snatched up. So give me Marquez by a round 2 submission. That's how I see this playing out most likely. Up next at 170, we've got a welterweight bout between Jake Matthews and Matt Semelsberger. I feel pretty confident about picking the winner of this one. Jake Matthews in his prime, 28 years old, as is Semelsberger at 30. Both guys comparable height and reach. Matthews is a minus 235 on the money line. Matt Semelsberger about a plus 200 underdog. Jake Matthews coming off of a very impressive performance. Semelsberger, not so much, right? Semelsberger was outpointed, outcountered, and outworked by Alex Morono. Not a bad loss, but, we're starting to see that Semelsberger has a lot of those big moments. The knockout punches over guys like Jason Witt, over Martin Sano. He did have, a nice close fight against Chaos Williams, but outstruck by a striker there. Lost that close decision, did have that win over AJ Fletcher, who's largely a grappler, so he won that one. But what happens when he faces Jake Matthews, who has all of the skills at a high level and has been forged through the elite of the UFC since he was a young kid? I mean, Jake Matthews is 28 years old at welterweight. He's had 16 UFC fights at this point, so pretty good durability. The only time he was KO'd last was against Kevin Lee back in his prime in 2016. So he's been durable, and Jake Matthews just beat Andre Fiallo at his own game. Took a page out of Fiallo's book, stood with him, banged with him, and knocked him out in round 2 of that fight. So, and that was just in June at UFC 275. Semelsberger fought a little bit more recently than that, but you've got such a well-rounded mix of skills for Matthews. 5 knockouts, 7 submissions, and 6-1 in decisions. Whereas Semelsberger, again, a knockout artist over not the best level of competition, right? 6 knockouts over his 10 wins. He is negative in decision results at this point. So, again, Semelsberger, athletic enough, big enough to handle a certain level of competition. But he's outgunned here against Jake Matthews, in my opinion, who can take this fight to the mat with his wrestling, add to that wrestling with some submission offense. And then on the feet, he can hang with the power of Semelsberger as well, and he's been proven pretty durable. So give me Jake Matthews here. I do have a bet on him at that money line. Even if this goes like minus 250, getting a little up there. There is a puncher's chance for Matt Semelsberger, but I do like Matthews in this spot quite a bit. Women's strawweight bout up next between Cheyenne Vlismas and Corey Mckenna. Both women are pretty young, 27 for Vlismas, 23 for Corey Mckenna. They both have winning records in the UFC so far, and they both have 7-2 professional records. Now, there's a minus 190 price tag on the money line of Cheyenne Vlismas, plus 170 currently the underdog for Corey Mckenna. Almost a striker versus grappler matchup, right? We've got Corey Mckenna, who at 5'3", the same height as Vlismas, but giving up 5 inches of reach. Her size and reach is always going to be a disadvantage for her, and she has to use her wrestling and try to get in range, clinch up against the cage where she's proven to be decently strong, but she's got to get the fight to the mat and control her opponents there the large majority of each round to win the fight. Vlismas, very good mover, very good striker, improved, I would say, and in her last fight we saw last December, she fought Mallory Martin and racked up not only impressive strikes, powerful strikes, but over 110 significant strikes, I want to say, in that fight. So very high output as well. She basically tripled up Martin on the strikes and won the decision. She also shows power. We saw that Gloria DePaula knockout in 1 minute from that head kick a while back. So Vlismas, a lot of good things going for her. The only bad mark on her resume we've seen was that decision loss against Montserrat Ruiz, where she got head and arm throwed over and over and controlled on the mat. So You've got to hope that she has been working against that, trying to show some better takedown defense, because she will need it against Corey Mckenna. And we saw that last year against Mallory Martin. Even though not the best opponent, she did show very good takedown defense, circling off the cage in a proper way, working on breaking space and getting back to striking range. And she showed very good balance there as well, not to mention her cardio was on point in that fight. Now, Corey Mckenna, she got outstruck by Elise Reed, which... not the best look at all, but what was worse was the fact that she did not even try to get in range and grapple with her until the ends of each round. So very big strategy and IQ mistake there. Obviously, she righted that wrong, but it was against Miranda Granger, who had returned off of a solid layoff, and just not the best opponent either. So there's a lot to be proven from each woman here. I will take Cheyenne Vlismas to win. She is the more physical, more imposing woman here with a lot of power behind her strikes. It's not your typical women's strawweight striker. It's very purposeful and fight-ending intent behind a lot of her strikes. Very good 3-2 counters. Makes her opponents really think twice before they enter range against her. So give me Vlismas to be the faster and better mover here and land more damage and do better striking work than Mckenna can employ effective grappling. Up next at middleweight is a very fun fight between Mikhail Oleksiejczuk and Cody Brundage. Brundage filling in for Albert Duraev on short notice. And this is Mikhail Oleksiejczuk's second walk to the UFC as a middleweight. He does have 9 UFC appearances where he's gone 6-3. At a shocking 27 years young, Cody Brundage is 1 year older, both guys about the same height and reach. Oleksiejczuk, 17-5 record. He will have the more pro experience here. Very good technical boxer for the Polish Oleksiejczuk. He's got power. He leaves a little bit to be desired with his striking defense, but able to dispose of Sam Alvey in his first walk to the cage as a middleweight this year with a round 1 knockout. And that's kind of the theme with Oleksiejczuk, right? He's got very good power early, but many of his fights don't go very far. Out of his 9 fights in the UFC, 6 have ended under 1.5. 5 of them have ended in round 1. He's finished 4 of his 6 UFC wins. So very good boxing, good combinations, a slick uppercut. Cody Brundage will match the early aggression of Mikhail Oleksiejczuk, though. Even though he's a little bit sloppier with his technique, he has very good power he's shown so far, and he's a wrestler with power in his hands. Cody Brundage will have the grappling advantage, in my opinion. Mikhail, we've seen, finished in 4 of his 5 losses, and Mikhail has been tapped out in the UFC a couple of times already by, of course, OSP and Jimmy Crute, which are high-level guys, but it's still a path to victory for Brundage here if he wrestles and closes the distance. And if Brundage is the aggressor first, he has a very good chance of pulling this off as an underdog, in my opinion. But similar to Oleksiejczuk, out of 8 wins and 2 losses for Brundage, only 2 fights have actually seen the scorecard. So my favorite bet for this fight is fight doesn't go to decision. The under 2.5, I'm sure this will be set as an over under 1.5, but if you can pick that under 2.5 to give yourself some extra time at a good price tag, I wouldn't mind that. And from what I've said here, early potential for Oleksiejczuk. Brundage, we've seen be able to at least go late and have some cardio to push the pace. I think if he pushes the wrestling and pushes this past the dangerous round 1, Brundage is live to get this victory as an underdog on short notice. So we're looking at minus 270 for Oleksiejczuk, plus 230 for Brundage. The line is just way too wide for my liking. I'm going to go with Brundage to pull off the upset. It's going to be the overhand right of Brundage to counter, or it's going to be that slick uppercut from Oleksiejczuk, I think, in round 1. So I'd rather Brundage push the pace, close the distance, and get that rear waist body lock and try to take this fight to the mat. He's live for a late submission in this fight if he can push the pace. So give me Cody Brundage, but my favorite bet on this fight might not be his underdog price tag. I might take a stab on that, but for now, I like the fight doesn't go to decision. Up next at lightweight is one of the more intriguing fights of the card. I'm looking forward to it. It's a head-scratcher as far as who wins this fight, in my opinion. Drew Dober taking on Bobby Green. This is a spot where you've got 2 guys, kind of towards the end of their prime at lightweight. 34 for Drew Dober, 36 for Bobby Green. Long careers and very similar ones within the UFC. Both guys started around, I think, 2013 apiece, and both have had 19 UFC fights. 11-7 and 1 no contest for Drew Dober, and Bobby Green has had 10 wins, 8 losses, 1 draw. So very similar in both of these guys. Drew Dober is a solid southpaw striker, wins big moments, and the more devastating knockout puncher of the 2. He actually, I believe he's tied with, 2nd or 3rd place for most knockouts in lightweight history in the UFC. Whereas Bobby Green, he does have 10 knockouts on his record, but you got to remember, this guy was getting into firefights back in Strikeforce a long time ago. In the UFC, not a devastating fight ender. He did go on a 10-fight decision result streak before demolishing Ally Aquinta last November. So usually a decision fighter, a slick counterpuncher, hands low, loose, brings that traditional boxing elusivity and defense into the cage, rolling the shoulder, not letting punches hit him clean, and slick pull counters. He does bring his hands up if he's challenged close and clinched up, but overwhelms his opponents with pace, amazing cardio, and just solid striking output, and just peppers them with punches. Drew Dober is going to have to really get in range, take a lot of chances as he's known to do, and land some very big fight-changing, round-changing strikes. I'm just not sure if he's going to be able to do it, especially since he's the favorite at minus 150. Bobby Green is the underdog, shockingly, at plus 130. Bobby Green's last fight was against Islam Makhachev on short notice. He was like a plus 800 underdog or something crazy. He did get finished by TKO, by ground and pound. He just couldn't get back up to his feet. He's only been put out by strikes one time clean, and that was to Dustin Poirier back in the day. Drew Dober is coming off of back-to-back firefights. One against Rafael Alves, where he ended up weathering the early storm, winning the fight in round 3. And before that was against Terrence McKinney, which was a very early storm as well. He ate like 2 or 3 flying knees, a bunch of hooks up close in the pocket. And he but waited until McKinney slowed down. He got a knee of his own and ended the fight. Now, why do we know that Drew Dober has elite durability? It's because he's hit quite often. So that bothers me in a guy who can win a point-fighting fight like Bobby Green. So I'm probably going to side with Bobby Green. There is the discussion of this guy coming off of a suspension for performance enhancements, but I don't read much into that. And I almost did a full video on this topic, but there just wasn't enough solid, true information released about it for me to make, a responsible video. But he was, I believe he was suspended for, he claimed, elevated testosterone levels and a substance called DHEA, which he took just like an over-the-counter supplement. You can find that in stores. Now, that is banned by World Anti-Doping and the Olympics. That is banned by, of course, USADA, which is the U.S. branch of that. But it's not really like a performance enhancer in the way that you would think. DHEA is basically the building blocks to sex hormones. But taking a lot of it is something that athletes do, thinking that if you take more of this substance, you ingest it, you'll make more sex hormones. So he probably was looking for a performance-enhanced result. I don't think he got it. Now, they did release that. I'm not sure if they even released this, but he said elevated testosterone levels. If you take a lot of DHEA, you will flag probably for very sensitive tests for the metabolite that they would test for testosterone. So whether or not he was juicing, not even like in the question. I mean, all these guys are juicing. You'd be dumb to fight in a cage in your underwear with 4-ounce gloves and not use something to make your money. But either way, my point is, I don't think that the 6-month suspension for PEDs is some crazy, he's going to be totally off of his game now without what he needed. I don't think it was that big of a deal. But all that being said, Bobby Green, live underdog. I will pick him to win this fight by decision. But, man, this is a close fight, and I don't want to get in the way of Drew Dober, who certainly has a path to victory as well. So maybe fight doesn't go is a good bet here, but Bobby Green will be the pick as an underdog. Next up at featherweight, we've got one of my favorite fighters on the UFC roster, Alex Bruce Leroy Caceres, taking on Julian Erosa. A very fun fight. Hard to believe that Caceres will be the older man by 1 year. He's 34 years old, and he's been in the league since 21 years old when he was on The Ultimate Fighter. I remember watching YouTube videos of him before The Ultimate Fighter, back fighting in the unlicensed backyard fighting scene with Dada 5000, choking people out back then when he was like 19 and 20. So this kid has been around a while. He's kind of like the George Masvidal, where he went the OG unlicensed route, came to legitimacy in the league, and now he's had 26 UFC fights, going 15-11 in those. One thing Caceres does have is very creative kickboxing, spinning techniques, a lot of Taekwondo type styles, and it makes you forget that he's really a good BJJ player for the most part, is how he gets his wins, 7 submissions versus his 3 knockouts. So this is a guy where he's had a lot of experience in the league over a long period of time. One thing he does lack, though, is the power to end the fight, the power to earn the respect of his opponents from marching him down. And he also, not that he's not the most durable guy. He's only been put out, I believe, 1 time in his career. But he can be knocked down. He just recovers very well. But he's coming off of a very impressive end to his 5-fight winning streak. The 5-fight winning streak wasn't the most impressive competition. It did culminate with that awesome comeback victory over Sungwoo Choi by rear naked choke, but he just came off of, in March, a decision loss to Sadiq Yusuf. Sadiq Yusuf is a guy who's like steamrolling people now, so he was not able to steamroll Caceres, but he did outstrike him at key moments, cause damage, and chop down Caceres' leg and movement as well. Julian Erosa, killer be killed fighter, always in and out of the UFC. This is like his third stint in the organization, but 28 wins, 11 knockouts, 12 submissions in those. He is 5-4 in decisions. So Julian Erosa, not the best durability. He can be knocked out. I think he's been KO'd like 5 times, but never been submitted, which is interesting in this matchup because you don't need to worry about Caceres' power that much, right? What you need to worry about is his submission threat, and Erosa can hang in the grappling, and Erosa has probably the superior ability to get the fight to the ground. He's got very good wrestling, catches kicks well, marches forward with his size at 6'1" in this bout. He's got a nice long jab and a nice rear cross, as well as dangerous clinch weapons, knees, very short hooks and elbows and things like that. So, you know, the better finisher is Erosa. He's the bigger man here, the better wrestler with really good submission offense and defense. I got to pick Julian Erosa here. Plus money on Caceres is always intriguing, but where the money line is at now, you're getting plus 140 for Bruce Leroy, minus 160 for Erosa. I got to lean with Julian Erosa here. I think he does get it done. Crowds the space, traps Caceres against the cage, and eventually gets the fight to the mat and possibly ends this inside the distance. So give me Erosa to do the better work here. Up next at flyweight, we've got the biggest betting favorite on the card, Amir Albazi, returning to face Alessandro Costa. Another short notice spot here where Alessandro Costa is filling in, making his debut for both Alex Perez and Brandon Royval. We're supposed to fight Amir Albazi. Both fell through. We've got the newcomer Alessandro Costa. And if that name is familiar, he was on the Contender Series earlier this year, I think the first week of the season, where he got a win, split decision win over his opponent, did not get a contract because it was kind of a lackluster fight. You know, both guys were hesitant, careful. Costa did show some strong power in that fight and some takedown defense, but overall, lack of striking output, especially at flyweight. Costa is a Brazilian submission-based fighter with power in his hands and feet as well, 26 years old, and he is, pretty dangerous off of his back, right? 5 armbar wins off of his 6 submissions. He went back after that split decision win on the Contender Series, got a brutal round 1 knockout over an opponent in the Lux Fight League, where he's done a lot of his work as a pro. And I think it was a scheduled 5-round fight. He knocked him out in like 12 seconds. Just a quick jab, cross, left hook. The guy was on the canvas. So Costa does have power, good leg kicks, pretty fast, and he's got okay wrestling, okay cardio. I just see Amir Albazi as just a much better guy. There's a reason he's, what are we looking at now, like a minus 500 or something favorite? Minus 450. Minus 500 on a lot of books already for Amir Albazi. It's hard to cover that price tag, but when you look at Amir Albazi, 29 years old, in his prime, 15-1 record. He's fought in Bellator, Brave, now the UFC, and he's coming off of making, even high-level BJJ fighters look like, he's the better grappler. So coming off of that round 1 submission win from Francisco Figueiredo after a 1.5 year long layoff, he's got good speed, good striking as well. He can do pretty much everything Costa can do, just a little bit better with more experience. So give me Amir Albazi. Not much I can do with this minus 500 price tag, but he probably should win inside the distance here. Maybe look towards the unders, and that covers the puncher's chance, the submission threat of Costa as well. So give me Amir Albazi pretty confidently. Okay, we have a treat at lightweight for the co-main event. Damir Ismagulov versus Arman Tsarukyan. 31 years old for Ismagulov versus the young 26-year-old Arman Tsarukyan. Both guys stellar records, 24-1 for Ismagulov, who's coming off of a victory, split decision win over Guram Kutataladze, and we've got Arman Tsarukyan coming off of a very close unanimous decision loss to Mateusz Gamrot in a 5-round fight. So 18-3 record for Tsarukyan as well. This guy is a hell of a 26-year-old at lightweight who's had a hell of an initiation into the elites at 155. I mean, they're really throwing him into sink or swim, fighting Islam Makhachev early on, getting a loss there. Mateusz Gamrot, like I said, a very close fight in a 5-rounder. And now Ismagulov, who's got a stellar record at 24-1. The former M1 champion Ismagulov has 12 knockouts, 1 submission. He's 11-1 in decision results. And 5 of those wins in the UFC where he's gone undefeated are all decision wins. So he does have slick boxing. He's got a very long reach at 74 inches, a couple more than Tsarukyan here. But the power and the fight-ending ability so far at the UFC level goes to Arman Tsarukyan, who even at 26 years old shows improvements, durability, great pace and cardio, and just damaging ground and pound, and slick combinations on the feet as well. So in a spot here where both guys have very good takedown defense, very good at grappling, maybe that nullifies itself and it becomes a striking match. And at that point, this is a close fight as well as it would be on the ground. Going over the odds here, Ismagulov is actually a sizable underdog, moderate underdog at plus 160. Arman Tsarukyan, minus 180, the favorite here. I'm wondering why that is. I mean, Ismagulov did show some defensive liability against Guram Kutateladze. He was hit. Sometimes those check hooks were finding their mark. But Ismagulov was having success with his amazingly active and accurate jab. Sometimes he uses that jab, Demir does, as a lead left hook as well. Good pull counters, good feints for both guys here. Tsarukyan is fast, and I think the speed is going to be a factor in this fight. I give the speed on the feet and probably in the grappling to Tsarukyan. I mean, Ismagulov has only been taken down one time, and that was by Kutateladze in his last fight. Tsarukyan does a lot of good ground and pound, as we saw against Joel Alvarez and I believe Christos Giagos as well, when he can secure the takedown and get the fight to the mat. But as we saw with both of those fights I just mentioned, he does set up some of that wrestling with his striking on the feet. Very good combinations. He's got a long reach, like a 6-foot wingspan, even though he's 5'9", so that does aid in strikes hitting you from spots where you probably don't think the shorter man would be able to reach you from. And he'll likely be able to couple that striking success with some good takedown offense. I think he will be the second man to take down Ismagulov, but this is a very close fight. You've got youth, the fight-ending power in the UFC, and just the ability to improve at 26 years old for Tsarukyan. You might have to project that this kid might actually make another level of improvement going into this fight. Ismagulov, you kind of have seen what you need to see from him. You watch his M1 regional fights. He has fought a lot of really good wrestlers and maintained that good takedown defense and grappling defense there. And that's really what I like about Ismagulov is his defense. Striking defense, very elusive, great head movement and feints. He can see strikes coming from a mile away, have that sixth sense, and pull counter you and jab off your face. He also has very good takedown defense as well and good strength. So this is going to be the offense I like from Tsarukyan versus the defense I like from Ismagulov. That makes me think that this fight should be a lot closer on the money line than minus 180 Tsarukyan. So I'm going to dig into this more, maybe find some spots that I like on here to bet. I might just stay off of betting aside and just watch this one as a fan. But I do like, with the durability of both guys and the skill set, I do like fight goes to decision. Have to see what that number is. That prop has not been released yet, but I'd be looking at the over 2.5 and the fight goes to decision. So ultimately, I'm going to trust in the improvements of a young 26-year-old who's had a really tough time in the UFC with some great competition. You got to imagine that level of competition he's been hanging with is going to allow him to keep leveling up at a very fast, accelerated pace. So give me Tsarukyan to be the faster, more powerful, and dangerous man here and get his hand raised. Okay, we made it to the main event of the fight card, the final main event of 2022. We've got a middleweight bout, potentially for 5 rounds, between Jared Cannonier and Sean Strickland. Both guys have just lost to the former and current champion on the same night, so they're looking to solidify themselves with a win here and get back on track towards title aspirations. Now, Jared Cannonier, must-win situation here. He's 38 years old, nearing the end of his prime here. He was at, heavyweight at one point, a short, unsuccessful stint at light heavyweight. Then, since 2018, he's been 5-2 at middleweight. Over the summer, he lost a 5-round decision to Israel Adesanya, the former champion, where he, in a pretty uneventful fight, just could not find that kill shot, got outpointed and outstruck over 5 rounds. Now, Sean Strickland, on the same night, I believe, lost to the current middleweight champion, Alex Pereira, by knockout in round 1. Everybody thought Sean Strickland should not stand and bang with the former Glory Kickboxing 2-weight class champion in Alex Pereira, but he did just that and tested his luck, got knocked out by some vicious, that left hook and then a right straight, I believe. So, they're both looking to bounce back here. 25-4 is a solid record for Sean Strickland, who's got great kickboxing, solid boxing with the hands alone, just stalking his opponents with consistent volume, good cardio, and very good timing and speed as well. And he does have power to put people out. although you don't see it that often. He did put out Brendan Allen pretty viciously. I think that was the most recent one. Now, he has had success in 5-round fights, right? Before the Alex Pereira knockout loss, he beat Jack Hermanson in February over 5 rounds decisively. And last October, he, over 5 rounds, beat Uriah Hall. And in that fight, he was able to actually mix in wrestling as well. He started going for that in round 2 and then successfully in rounds 3, 4, and 5. That would be a good plan here against Jared Cannonier. That would be a great way to mix it up and fix the mistake of his last fight where he, didn't look to grapple at all. That still might be the game plan here against Cannonier. He might test his luck early, and then just like the Uriah Hall fight, as the fight goes on and Cannonier gets slower and slower, Sean Strickland can look to, get in the clinch, mix up some takedowns as well. The leg kicks will be big for Cannonier. Slow down that forward movement of Sean Strickland with those heavy leg kicks he's known for. The striking diversity definitely goes in the favor of Cannonier. He's got a lot of devastating counters, some big explosive movements. A lot of these things are done earlier than later in the fight, but they are very devastating and unpredictable compared to Sean Strickland, who's very basic with his movements. Now, I got to lean on the side of Sean Strickland here. I'm not leaning on his fight IQ. There is a good chance he gets knocked out in this spot should he choose to keep on pressuring forward and stay defensively lacking. But I got to say, I think that just the pure amount of strikes he throws per minute is going to add up over time. He throws almost 2 more significant strikes per minute on a large sample size average than Jared Cannonier. It's something like, I think, over 5.5 significant strikes thrown per minute for Sean Strickland. I think like less than 4 per minute for Jared Cannonier. And that's accounting for Jared Cannonier's heavyweight career, where a lot of those fights were shorter. All the finishing time, that cuts down on the average time per minute that you would have that stat. So, shocking that Sean Strickland has not been knocked out more, but he's only been knocked out a couple of times, one by Dos Santos and one by, of course, Pereira last time out. Jared Cannonier has been knocked out a couple of times as well, but that was up at heavyweight and light heavyweight. So, this is a spot where I do think that Sean Strickland's going to win most of the points by minute. Cannonier looking for those big round-defining moments that may or may not come, and probably will come a lot less frequently as the fight gets past the 1.5 round mark, the 2.5 round mark. Probably slides in the favor of Sean Strickland the later this goes. So give me Sean Strickland here. I'm not sure I'm going to bet this fight. Might just sit back and watch. I laid out a lot of things that Sean Strickland can do to make this fight more successful. He knows what to do. Sometimes he doesn't quite do that, just like we saw in the Pereira fight. So I'm not going to trust this guy to make any adjustments to his game. He could get knocked out again. But just based on the pure, minute winning and scoring ability of a 5-round fight that doesn't end inside the distance, give me Sean Strickland to win by decision. Okay, there you have it, you guys. All the fights broken down for UFC Vegas 66, Cannonier versus Strickland. A very fun fight card to end the year of 2022, where we will now have had 42 UFC events, and I've covered all of them, starting with Giga Chikadze versus Calvin Kattar back in January with 0 subscribers. Now the channel has grown to where it's at. It's gone way past where I ever thought it would go. I've met so many awesome subscribers and fans and, just fellow passionate members of this MMA community that I know and love so well. And I've been watching the sport. I went to my first cage fight when I was in kindergarten. I'm pushing 30 years old now, so it's been a long lifetime of just watching only one sport, obsessing over one sport, and now making money on one sport, and that is mixed martial arts. So thanks for liking, subscribing, sharing the video, and being so kind over this past year. I can't wait to have this continued success with you guys in 2023. I'll talk to you guys very, very soon. Cheers.